What part of this was hard for Joe Biden? Everything we warned him about, everything we warned the Biden administration about, we, meaning all of us, conservatives out there, would happen if Joe Biden did something. We said this would happen. Everything happened. I'm going to show you some headlines in this segment called What Part of This Was Hard to show you how Joe Biden did X and then Y happened. And the reason I call this section of the show, What Part of This Was Hard, is because you don't need to be an Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking level of genius to have figured out that if Joe Biden did this thing, that this thing would happen. This was not some wonky political argument that, hey, what would happen if we told a bunch of immigrants from foreign countries who would migrate to the United States, hey, come here. We will then take your kids in, no problem. We'll pay a series of benefits. By the way, we're going to stop construction on the wall. We're going to welcome you with open arms. What would happen if we did that? Stunner. Hundreds of thousands of people a month started coming to the United States illegally. Shocker. Well, of course, I'm being unnecessarily sarcastic because what part of this was hard? On the what part of this was hard, let's start with immigration first. Because maybe headlines will make more sense to the leftists out there who couldn't figure this stuff out in advance when we all warned them. Washington Post. Biden cancels border wall projects Trump paid for with diverted military funds, by Nick Miroff. Biden cancels a border wall. Now, what part of this was hard? If you are someone living in a foreign country, not just Central or South America, but anywhere in the world, and your desire is to come to the United States, what part of I'm canceling the border wall that's already paid for, what part of that message don't you get? I know this is complicated for the libs listening, but for the sane people in my audience, what message would you get if you lived in a country called Kriplakistan, and you wanted to move to Kritakistan, and Kritakistan said, we're not going to construct a border wall we already paid for? Would the Kritakistanis get the message that, hey, it's probably okay that I go there? I would, and I'm not a Kritakistani. Wouldn't anyone? Is this hard? So after Biden sends this message to the international community, don't worry, we'll take your kids, no problem. Just leave them at the border. We're not going to turn them away. They've said that. I can play the audio, but I got a lot to get to today. People, unsurprisingly, started coming to the United States, as evidenced by the second headline from the Washington Examiner, Beckett Adams. Biden owns the immigration crisis. Again, because what part of this was hard? Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's not it. That's not it. I wish it were. You may say, gosh, Dan, things sound really bad. Folks, I don't want to depress you with the show. That's not my goal. These problems are fixable. I promise you on a good note. I'm telling you the bad stuff because we can fix it. We have been here before in really bad spots. We can fix it. Will we fix it? I don't know. Can we? Yes. Trump had the border crisis largely fixed. Not solved, but largely fixed. So what part of the government spending equation was hard? Someone in government, we warned the Biden regime, just like we warned them about immigration. Open the borders and you're going to get an open border. Huh? Well, we warned them also about the government spending problem, which, to be fair, has happened on the Republicans and Democrats. Bush spent a lot of money. The Trump administration spent a lot of money, too. They said they didn't want to, and Congress stuck it down their throats, but they did spend a lot of money, too. We've warned Republicans and Democrats. When you spend a lot of money you don't have, you're going to have a bankruptcy problem. And you know what's going to happen? In order to pay for the government spending you don't have, what do? You have to print money. And when you print money, what happens? Gee, let me think about it. When you print a bunch of money and you don't produce more products to suck the money up like a sponge, it's more money chasing the same products, which surprisingly to the Biden administration leads to this thing called inflation. You can find these articles in my newsletter today if you need to read them yourself because you're a leftist and you think we're making them up or something. What part of this was hard on government spending? Washington Times, Stephen Dinan, back in February. The federal deficit's pegged at $2.3 trillion this year, says the CBO. $2.3 trillion. Ladies and gentlemen, our entire economy is worth about $20 trillion. So our deficit alone, not our government spending, the government spending we're spending that we don't have the money for, is $2.3 trillion, is a tenth of our entire economy's worth right now. Just this year's deficit. So if we don't have this money because we're running a deficit, again, to our leftist friends, I'm sorry to insult you, but a deficit means that's the money we didn't have. So we spent $2.3 trillion this year. We're going to, projected to. Well, where did we get the money if we didn't have it? We spent about, $4 trillion? $5 trillion? So we had about $3 trillion in taxes and spent $2.3 trillion more. Where did we get that from? Where did we get it from? Well, the answer, folks, is large swaths of it were printed. Yes, printed by our Federal Reserve, which through various fancy names, quantitative easing and otherwise, is basically printing money and giving it to our Treasury. Well, folks, again, what part of this was hard? When you print a bunch of money because you don't have money to spend, because you ran out of tax dollars, and you then spend in deficit by printing money, and you print more money than the economy can absorb because we're not producing more products. Matter of fact, we don't even have gas right now in a lot of areas of the Southeast. There's a major gas crisis due to the Colonial Pipeline being shut down. Then what happens when, again, my liberal friends, I'm very sorry. I actually don't have any liberal friends, but let's pretend for a moment. We're just going to do reason here. Reason. Facts, data, that kind of stuff. When you print a bunch of money to chase a bunch of products, and you print more money to chase the same number of products, that's more money for the same number of products, which means the products will cost more. What part of this is hard? What part of this is hard? Now, just like we can fix the immigration crisis quite quickly by going back to some of the things President Trump did, building the wall, telling the Mexican, South American, Central American governments as well, hey, don't send people here. We're going to send them back. That actually worked. We can do the same thing about the inflation crisis and the debt crisis too. And again, ladies and gentlemen, none of this is hard. It's just that 535 of the dumbest people on planet Earth all seem to get elected to Congress at the same time. I take that back. There are a few good ones up there. 435 House members, 100 members of the Senate. Here's how you solve this problem quickly. And we can, and we will eventually. Because as Herb Stein famously said once, what can't continue won't. Number one, you just stop spending money you don't have. Oh my God. Wow. Dan Bongino, you must be a genius. No, far from it. And then secondly, you don't print a bunch of money to chase a bunch of products. You try and keep your monetary base relatively stable. Again, I know these are stunning assertions. I mean, what do I know? I'm just a former cop and Secret Service agent. I'm not that bright. Hey, we got a deficit problem? Maybe we shouldn't spend money we don't have. Genius. We got an inflation problem. Well, maybe we shouldn't spend money we don't have by printing more to chase same amount of product. Everybody's scratching their head in government like, where do you get that idea? Again, what part of this is hard for the Biden administration to get? And the Rhino class too. They don't get a pass here either. What part of the stimmies was hard? I know I drove you nuts here. I'm sorry. You know I could wear something out. It drives Paula crazy too. I must have said stimmy payments, the stimulus. I heard they were called stimmies. I must have said that 100 times in the show. A couple of you commented on Rumble and elsewhere. You're like, all right, Dad, you can wear some out. I get it. The show's for you. If it annoys you, it annoys me. But with the government stimulus payments we're giving to people not to work, what part of this was hard? When government pays people not to work, pays people more to not work than to work, then why would a rational person go to work if they can make more money by not working? I'm just asking questions, folks. I'm just asking questions because this isn't difficult. But again, because we elected one of the dumbest human beings in the country into the White House, and then 535 minus a few other morons got elected to Capitol Hill, they can't seem to figure out that paying people not to work more than if they went to work would cause people not to work. They're scratching their heads like, oh my gosh, where did that come? Where did that happen? What's gone wrong? Before I get to the headlines on the government stimulus payments, I heard a commentator on Fox yesterday, a liberal, and I forget his name. I've seen him on. He was on during the daytime shows. Takes himself a little too seriously, in my opinion. He's like, the American people want to work. That doesn't mean anything that we're paying them more not to work, and they're not working in many respects. Folks, that's not an argument. The American people want to work as an appeal to emotion. Yes, they do. The country has 330 million people. But the hard reality is maybe 10 or 20 million of them right now aren't going to work. You saying they want to go to work does not comport with the facts that many of them are not working. That's not an argument. That's an appeal to emotion. Again, here's the headlines because our leftist friends have a tough time if they don't see it in a headline about government stimulus payments. Here's an article in Reason. Congress is paying people a lot of money to not work. Peter Suderman. This is back last year, by the way, from 2020, when they figured out this may be a problem. Again, what part of this is hard? Paying people not to work. Well, maybe they don't work if they get paid. Well, followed up by the Wall Street Journal article, millions are unemployed. Why can't companies find work? Again, this is all fixable. Build a wall. Encourage foreign governments not to send people here illegally. Don't spend money you don't have. Don't print money you don't have. And don't pay people not to work when there are 8 million open jobs. What part of this is complicated? Is it just us? Is it just us? Are seriously, to my wonderful audience, are we all idiots? What part of this is hard? What part? I want to cry right now. What part of this is hard? What part is hard?